This is my year 2000 Wellcraft 190 Fisherman. It's a 19-foot boat. It's actually really an 18 with a bow pulpit. It's been sitting for a few years, so I'm trying to get it back into shape. So I've been working on the engine. I've got the carburetors off right now, rebuilding them, cleaning them out anyway. And I'm going to have to pull the head of the starboard head off because it has a slight leak. You can see here, this head has a slight leak right in here. So I'm going to have to pull that off. The engine was rebuilt and only run for a few hours, and then it sat for about 3 or 4 years. So I've got new spark plugs in here, and I think I just have to pull this head off and it doesn't have a this 115 Johnson doesn't have a gasket on the head, so you just put gasket material and create your own gasket and then torque it back down again from the middle bolts out to the edge bolts. Got myself a cheap torque wrench. Hopefully that will work. The engine is running, it just has a slight leak right up in here, and I don't want to cause any trouble. It's like the water is sort of bubbling out very slowly. So anyway, but right now, because it's been sitting so long, I've got an issue with the steering, and I'm trying to correct that. You can see the steering cable here is broken, and it's broken here. It was partially corroded and broken, but I used these finally had to use these bolt cutters and cut it all the way off. Had to cut the steering, what do you call this pin thing here, this tilt tube. Looking for it, hold on. Here it is, this the tilt tube rod that's at the end of the steering cable. You see, it was kind of corroded right there, but I had to cut it all the way off because when it was connected, I couldn't get this tube out of the tilt area. What do you call that? The tilt tube, I guess. I couldn't get it out of there because there's just not enough room here at the edge of the transom. So I cut that, and then I was able to get the tilt tube out, which I don't need anymore because the new cable has a new connector here. What this does, this goes through all the way through the engine, all the way through the tilt tube area over to here, and then it connects to this rod right there, right here. This connects to that. When the engine turns, this will connect right into here, and that turns the engine. So there's no issue with the tube itself. It seems to have lots of play in it. So I've got this off, and now I'm going to take this steering cable, and I'm going to pull it through the stern here, and stern the transom, and the inside of there, hopefully, I don't think you can see it, but inside there is a PVC pipe which goes through the starboard side all the way up here and all the way down under the helm, and I'll show you that in a minute. And so I'm going to pull this I'm going to go up into the helm and detach it from the steering column, and I'm going to pull this steering cable through. And I went to make sure I could pull the new one through. I went and got some pretty decent, strong, I don't know if you call this twine or whatever. I got West Marine, and it's pretty strong. I'm going to attach it right here. Attach it right like that somewhere and tape it. And then we're going to pull this all the way through, and this cord will be pulled all the way through to the front. And then I will attach the new steering cable that I just bought. It's a 16-foot C-Star, formerly known as Teleflex cable. And we're going to pull that from the front all the way back toward the stern and back to here. I guess I could go from the front to the back or the back to the front, but I figured I would go from the front to the back because of this tube. This is connected to the new steering cable, and I don't think it would be too easy to fish this all the way through that pipe from the rear. So I'll start here and then go in here and fish just the other end of it all the way up to the helm and connect it up there. So I've got the line attached to the other end of the steering cable, and we're going to pull that through. Not going to pull up, we're going to pull, it's going to be pulled from the other side, and you'll see the steering column, this string moving hopefully. We're going to pull it through to the front. So here's the view from under the helm. You can see the steering wheel there. There's what they call the helm, or the back of the steering wheel. You can see the steering cable coming in on the top up here, and it goes through the helm here, and then the excess comes out this side. So there's a little bit left. This is extra. So it goes in up there and comes around down here. After watching countless videos and talking to people, I believe there are 2 screws here, or bolts. I mean, this bolt here, and I think that bolt up top. If you can see it, that bolt up there, that I've got to remove, and then this will come loose, and I can pull that cable straight out in this direction, and then you can see the cable goes through the bottom of the console. You can still see the cable there, and it goes down into that hole right there, and that's the fish hole where we have to fish through all the cabling and the control panel, the control cable, and the transducer cable, electronics, and what else? Engine controls, things like that. So I'm going to pull this cable here, hopefully, down through there and out the rear, and then I'm going to attach that cord to it and then pull the new one through the boat and up into here and connect it right into that helm there. Hopefully that helm is in good enough shape. It doesn't look very good, and we will hopefully have a new steering cable. So I saved some time here on the video, which was kind of frustrating because I had to take out, I took that bolt partially out, I took that bolt partially out, I took that bolt in the back partially out, and I was about to take this bolt partially out to try to unhook the steering cable from where it goes in. It was in like that. Actually, it was in like that. And all I really had to do is take these two screws out, 2 bolts out. There was one there. If you can see it, there's one there and one there. And the bolts are right here. Took me a while to get them out. Heart hurts like hell in this position. So anyway, once I got that bolt out and that bolt out closest to the end where the cable enters the helm, I just pulled it out, and there it is. So now the new steering column is going to go in that same spot, and then when I stick it in there, it's going to the edges of it is going to wind around to here, and then I'm going to turn the steering wheel, and you'll see the excess will come out this way, and then I'll put a cover over that, and then the steering column will be in. But right now, the next thing to do here under the console. Sorry for the shaky video. Under the console here is going to be to get this to start going out and going down through the tube. I'm going to bring it out this way so I can see where it's going. And we're going to get this out, pull this out of the boat one way or the other. And then I'm going to attach no, actually, I'm going to pull this way. I'm going to pull it in this direction. And I'm going to pull it from the rear out. But first I have to tie the line to the rear, the fishing line. All right, I've got it fished through. This is the new steering cable. We're going to attach it up into the helm up there. I got it pulled through with this cord right here with that knot on it. I was pretty lucky to have that knot not break, but I think it dug into the grooves of the cable. I had to take the rod lockers out to do this, to make sure I was fishing into the right tube from the came through the stern. Let me see if I can get up here. I'm laying on my back. So we started here, started fishing it in, trying to keep it as loose as possible. And I'm just gonna finish pushing it now. And then this will go right into there. It will push all the way through. It will go in without me getting out of the boat. Into the trim hole there. Comes out the other side. Then it will hook up. I just have to push the rest of this cable. I have probably about a foot too much cable. Have to push the rest of this through to the helm. And then use the excess in the helm, but I just had to take this off to make sure I was getting it fished through properly. Had to go around the water, fuel water separator and kind of play it by ear. The way I managed to do it was I would push hard on the cable and then pull gently on the cord. Then push hard on the cable, pull gently on the cord, and it managed to fish its way through all the other cables and wires in there. So that was probably the hardest part. So now I'm going to try to pull through the excess cable here. You can see the edge of the cable there, where my hand is. Be prepared to get grease all over your hands, all over your clothes. And if you're like me, out of shape and constantly getting up and laying on your back, you're going to get filthy and you're going to be out of breath. So I'll try to pull this up some more, but I got to get a grip on it here. Hold on. So I've got the pull cord now removed from the edge of the steering cable. And now I'm going to fish it into the helm. And hopefully it will go in easily as the other one came out. The biggest part getting the other one out was the issue with figuring out which screws I had to loosen up. So we're gonna, I don't know if you can see that, we're gonna fish that in the top side. And I believe at this point you start turning the wheel. Yep, there you go, look at that. Just like they told me on YouTube. So we're gonna start fishing that in, and the teeth grab it and start taking it in. I'm turning the wheel, as you can see. This really is helpful if you have a mate to help you. We're looking straight up now, by the way, from the deck of the boat toward the helm. I'm laying on my back. Hopefully you can hear me. Oh, as you can see here, there comes the first part of the steering cable out the other end. This is going to be the excess part where I have a little, they give you a little plastic sleeve to protect this, to keep water and debris out from the tube, from the cable, so it doesn't rot as quickly. This first cable lasted 21 years. This is a 2000 boat. So I think did pretty well, and really it's still working except for a crack in up by the engine, which I thought I could fix, but I was told no. So I wound up spending $134.99 at West Marine for a new cable. You can get these cables for as little as about $103, $109 on Amazon and marineengine.com and places like that. $112, $109, $103, $115, I think, but they would take at least a week to get here, and I needed to do this more quickly. So I'm going to keep churning this When it gets where that stainless steel part to the end here, that's where obviously I'm supposed to have it. I'm gonna have to pull some more cable through. Hold on. So I'm back at the engine again. And I wanted to make sure I could get this steering bar in here while I pushed the rest of the cable through. There's the cable, but I read and I see that I'm supposed to grease this up a bit. So we're gonna go ahead and use some marine grease. Put it on there pretty liberally. And then I'm going to put that into the hole here, the tilt tube. If I can get a hold of it now, how am I going to get a hold of it? I have to wash my hands. Okay, so we're back, and hopefully I can get this in the video. Grab this tilt tube and put it in here. I mean, not tilt tube, steering tube. You can tell this is an amateur job, but I think I'm going to get it done adequately. I just got to get a hold of it now. It's probably not the best idea to put the grease on, like I did. Pull this through this little sleeve that's on here to make things look neat in the back. There we go. Gotta get it out of the cords here. Put some more grease on because I wiped it off. Now I'm going to try to get this in there. There we go. Into the tilt tube it goes. It's going to start the nut a bit. Now I'm going to push back on the cable to give me some extra cable up front. It's a little bit twisted, but hopefully it will untwist in the process. Sure, if I took the engine off, it would be a lot simpler. Tougher than it looks. Gotta force it a little bit more. I'll straighten that out in a second, but this is almost done back here. So now that I've got a little bit of extra, the extra cable in here that I pushed through from the back, looks like I'm just going to barely have enough cable. I'm glad I got the 16 footer instead of the 15 that I had, or the 15 and a half. So anyway, we're back to the steering wheel again. As you can see, when I turn the steering wheel, it brings the edge of the cable in until this stainless steel connector hits the edge, and you make sure it's straight, fairly straight, and then you finish pulling in on the steering wheel, and it should make a click or a pop or something. So we're going to find out in a second. There it goes. There, it's going in. I didn't hear anything. I don't know, maybe this old one doesn't make a click or a pop. Here's the excess. Comes out the other side, and there's a sleeve they give you to protect this. So I don't like the way it's interacting with the speed control here. Gonna have to figure a way to fix that. So anyway, if it comes out, I want to see if it makes a clicking sound. I definitely didn't hear the click. So maybe these old ones don't click. I was told the new ones clicked, or they're supposed to make a click. Here it is. I'm going to take it out again. There it is out. Let me make sure it's going in as straight as possible. Okay, and now we're going to turn the wheel again, pull it in. And that's all it'll do. So I'm going to tighten these screws up, and we'll see if we got it working. So I lost the light, but I got those two bolts in up here, there, and there. Let's see if I can get it a little closer. Okay, so there and there, and that's where the cable clicks in, and there's the helm. Helm does not look too good. Now I got to go back to the rear and make sure I've got it hooked into the engine, and then I'm going to try to turn it. It does turn a little bit, but I think it's jammed in the tilt tube, so I have to fix that first. So now we're putting the cable into the tilt tube and just tightening this massive bolt up. It's going to push the tilt tube a little bit further through to the other side, where I can hook it to the bracket that actually holds up, that it turns the engine. See if I can get this where I can record. Do I have that? Yeah, there we go. I have a big wrench that'll do this, but I just don't have it with me. Takes a while to tighten this thing up. See some of the grease squeezing out of there. I guess that's okay. I can clean that up when I'm finished. It's pretty tight. I'll get it with the big wrench in a minute. Alright, so I just got to straighten this out in a second. So now, here's the other side of that piece. And this part of the engine has to get in here. I gotta turn the engine a little bit so I can get this piece in here. There we go. Maybe too much. So this has to connect to that tube. So I think what I can do is I can turn the steering wheel a little bit and get that tube to come out some, and that will make it easier to hook it up. Let's try that. And I'm going to go do that while the camera is running. Let's see if that tube comes out a little further. Definitely need a better tripod system if I'm going to be doing this on a regular basis. Tube came out a little bit more. Just gotta turn it a little bit. So that I can get this in there. I have to turn it just enough to get it hooked in. I'm going to get this thing on here. Figure the best way to do this. I don't know why this thing is so turned. There we go. Just about have it in there. Just about got it. Oh, it's almost in. Just need to turn that tube slightly. go. It should snap in. Oh, I made a big mistake though. I didn't put the washer in there. Remember, there's a washer that goes in there. And there's also plastic, kind of plastic nut on this side that goes on the tube. So I'm learning as I go here. I'll fix those in a second. I'm going to put the second washer on the bottom. Hopefully it'll hang there, and then we got a lock nut going on here. And this allows the tilt tube to literally pull the motor left and right. You snug that up pretty good. Oh, I shouldn't have done that because once again I forgot to put on the plastic nut. So we're going to try this again, kind of working trial by error here. Remember, before you put the arm that controls the steering arm, before you connect the steering arm to the steering cable tube, to put this plastic connector back on. I don't know how much good it really does. I guess it's supposed to keep out some debris and water, but I think I need another one. But I'll try to seal it up with some epoxy or something until I can get another one. It's all kind of cracked up. And then remember to put the first washer on before you put the steering arm into the steering tube, or whatever this is called, the steering cable tube. Give that a little love tap to get it in there. It's probably not going to work. I have to put that like that. There we go. And then we put the next washer on the bottom, and the lock nut. So I'm doing there, and it connects the steering arm with the steering tube, or whatever it's called. Obviously, I'm no pro at this, but just snug that up there pretty good. Should make it pretty tight, because if this comes loose while you're moving along in the water, it could spell disaster. You suddenly have no steering. Alright, so that's on there, nice and tight. And we come over to this side. I bent the steering cable so that it fits in properly and it's fairly straight. I'm going to tighten up that nut tomorrow morning when I have some light. So if we've done everything correctly, when I go up here to the steering wheel, we're going to see the motor turn finally again. Sorry for the mess, but there's grease everywhere. Okay, I'm going to turn the steering wheel. That's not so good. Alright, it was a little tight on the steering wheel here, but it seems to be moving now. I don't know if that's normal. The steering wheel is pretty tight. So I wonder if I need to go around a few times and get it lubricated. It is turning the motor. so cable's working, but wondering now if I might have a helm problem. This is very tight to turn. It's very difficult to turn. It is turning, so it is functioning, but nowhere near like it needs to function for proper use. So the last time I left off, I had the steering cable installed, and it turns out it was installed properly. I called C-Star, and also known as Teleflex. Spoke to one of their technicians, and we tested the cable to make sure it was working. It turns, what we did is we unhooked it from the back of the helm, which is right behind here. It's where the steering wheel goes, and we also disconnected it from the steering bar there, and the cable moved fine. So it turns out that the helm was just kind of bound up, and I did grease it up a bit and put some PB Blaster in there and did the best I could, and I did get it where it was moving pretty smoothly, but still a little bit of tension in the steering wheel, and it just seemed to be a little too much tension for it to be comfortable out on the water, especially for somebody who doesn't know really much about boating. If I let somebody else drive or something. So went out and bought, I had to invest more, and bought a new C-Star no feedback. It turns out this was a no feedback helm, and so I bought a new no feedback helm. The cheapest I could find it was what was it, $100 and close to $200 probably. Got it delivered in only a couple of days. It was really fast delivery. So here it is. So before I even get into the new one, here's the new one. Before I get into the new one, I had to remove the steering wheel, and as you've seen probably all over YouTube, the steering wheel, there it is down there, pretty good steering wheel, stainless steel, original Wellcraft. Turns out the steering wheel, the nut comes off pretty easily, but then the steering wheel is, because it has this, I'll show it to you, it has this this little locking key thing. Pretty good steering wheel, stainless steel, original Wellcraft. Turns out the steering wheel, the nut comes off pretty easily, but then the steering wheel is, because it has this, I'll show it to you, it has this this little locking key thing in it. It's got this little locking key thing here. Hopefully you can see it right there on the left where I'll put my finger on it, right there, and that slips into a little notch. Get a closer look at it. That slips into a little notch, and it's supposed to just slide right up out of there, just right up, and you slide that in, and it locks the steering wheel into place on the helm, and that wouldn't come out. And also the as predicted by everyone, the steering wheel was just locked in here from all this corrosion. I don't know if you can see the corrosion or not, but a lot of corrosion in there. The steering wheel was locked on, and I tried all the tricks, putting your leg under one side and pulling with the other side and hitting a hammer up here, but unfortunately the nut was on the edge, and I damaged the lock nut. And then when I finally did get the steering wheel to break loose, the lock nut was jammed on the top, and it took me probably an hour to get the lock nut off. And I finally got that off. I'm probably going to have to replace that. I hope a new lock nut comes with the new helm. Also, so that left me with the old helm, this is the old helm, and it works, but it felt a little tight. Maybe it could have been loosened, lubricated in some way. So I removed that. That leaves the hole here in the bracket. The bracket is pretty rough. It still functions, but there's a couple of bolts in there that I don't think I want to try to remove. So I'm going to leave the old bracket in and try to put the new helm in the old bracket. I hope that works, because the new bracket didn't come with the new helm didn't come with a bracket. You spend all that money, they don't even give you a bracket. Common wisdom is that when the steering wheel is stuck on the helm up there, you can you can get it free by hammering the actual steering column that the steering wheel sits on, and then pull out, and it should unlock. And that wouldn't work for me, but it finally did work after I hammered it a number of times, but I damaged the nut by doing that, so I have to replace the nut. The steering wheel seems to be in really good shape, so we're going to reuse that. And now I'm going to put the new helm in, and hopefully this will be smooth from here on in. I just got 3 bolts that hold the helm into the hole there. Be prepared for a hell of a mess when you do this. There's going to be all kinds of junk pouring out, and corrosion and everything you can imagine. Here's the old helm. That's the bolt I don't want to I mean the old bracket. I don't want to touch that bolt. These bolts are fine, but that, I don't think I want to touch that one. This bracket's solid. It's not going anywhere. So we're going to install the new helm into this bracket. There's just 3 bolts. I think it's here, here, and here. And then I have to reinsert the steering column into the new helm, and then put the steering wheel back on, and I'll show you that in just a minute. So I'm going to feed this helm underneath here. It's going to be hard to film it, but I'm going to kind of show you what I'm going to do. Here's the helm. I'm going to feed it underneath the center console and up into here, and I'm not going to be able to show you exactly this till I have a nut on, but I'm going to put the 3 bolts right in here. Okay, so here I am putting the bolts in the helm. I've got that bolt in there, I've got that bolt in there, and it's just kind of holding it in place until I get the 3rd bolt in. So I'm going to put the 3rd bolt right in the top there where you see the hole, and then I'll tighten these 3 up, and that will hold the helm in place so that I can put the steering wheel on and then install the steering cable. If you have a bracket like mine, you're going to need an extension. I'm glad I had one of these old extensions left over. I bought a brand new ratchet set, but I didn't have this long 1/2 inch extension. Is this 1/2 inch or 3/8? 1/2 inch, I think. And so that was the only way to get the bolt in there. I mean, get the ratchet in there to do these bolts because of the tightness of the space and the steering column sticking out. So I'm tightening these 3 bolts, which is bringing the helm up into the bracket, tightening it into the bracket. This one's going to be a little tough. Do this one first. As soon as this is all tightened up, then I guess I'll put the steering wheel on first and then put the steering cable on, because with the steering cable you have to wind it in using the steering wheel. I made that mistake earlier. I took the steering wheel off before taking the steering column out, the steering cable out, and then I had to put the steering wheel back on just to unwind the steering cable out of the helm. I used the old bolts instead of the new bolts because they seem to fit the bracket better. So here we are back to square one, looking up into the bottom of the console, and get this as wide as I can. And this is the new helm, looking at it from the back of the console, the inside the console. So we are going to put the new steering cable. There it is right there. We're going to insert it right up in here, and the 2 bolts go in. Some bolts go in right there and right there, and that just snugs it in, keeps it from coming back out. You wouldn't want to have it come out while you're boating. And then the steering cable goes through all the way through, comes out here, and then you snug it up with a bolt there, and it comes out, and then you have a cover to go over this part that sticks out here, so that you don't get a bunch of gook on there, and the gook winds its way into the steering system. So now I'm going to try to bend this cable as much as I can to work it into the hole, into the helm hole. Sounds funny, helm hole. And we're gonna put the steering wheel back on and then wind it in. So right now I'm going to leave that like that, and it's going to wind through there and come out here. But I can't wind it until I put the steering wheel on, so that's what's next. Now, as I feared, this little key thing that I showed you earlier, right there to the right of the steering column, it's sort of half moon shaped, and it goes in a slot there to hold the steering wheel onto the steering column. Well, I couldn't get that off. And the new helm, for all the money you spend for it, you spend $200 for a helm, and it doesn't have a 10-cent piece of metal that would make it so much easier. So it did not come with the key, and it also didn't come with a new nut that goes on right here. It's on right there, and I sort of damaged the old nut taking it off. So I may have to go get a nut and a new key thing and do this properly. So unfortunately, we're back to the same problem we had with the old helm. Now that I've got the helm and the steering wheel completely installed, we're back to this sluggish. There's a little bit of play between left and right. When you start left and you start back right, and it turns, but it's kind of sluggish. You know, you really have to push on it. It's not anywhere near loose. I tried tightening and retightening the bolts in the back that hold the cables in, and I also tried retightening the main nut and loosening the main nut, see if that would help. It had no effect. So it is turning, and at some points it seems quicker than others or easier than others. Like right now it's kind of tough, but it's no better with the new helm. So it turns out I may not have even needed a new helm. The old helm may have worked, and there's a problem somewhere else. So we're going to go back and check now the what's going through the tilt tube and the tube going through the tilt tube that turns the motor, and seeing if that's okay. So I took off the actual turn bar there that connects the engine to the steering cable. Right there, I disconnected that, and at that point the steering turned just like a dream. It was just dream steering, very milky left to right, very smooth. So now I know the helm is working properly, and the steering cable is working properly. So there could be something going on inside the tilt tube here. I haven't given it any grease in that grease nipple there. I'm going to try to give it some grease and see if that helps. When I did remove the entire steering column, you know, I looked into the tilt tube, and it didn't look corroded, it didn't look that bad. So maybe I needed to clean it out a little more, or it just needs some grease. We're going to try grease first. The other issue is the engine might have been hitting the ground. So how stupid is that, right? So the engine could have been touching the grass, which would have made the steering a little bit more difficult. And I since have brought the engine up. So we're going to give a little more, we're going to give some grease down here. I just got to find a grease gun and fill it up with grease really well and see if that might be our problem. And then before I do anything more with the helm. But it's possible that I bought a new helm for nothing, and that these issues back here might have been what the problem was to begin with. But that's installed. That's all back tightened down again. The steering wheel is on. It's ready to go. It's just a mess to clean up here. Everything is good underneath, and I think if the grease is my only problem, then we're pretty much ready to go.